Chicago Fed President Austan Goolsbee has some thoughts about this. And rather than, Austan, good morning.
Good morning.
Rather than starting where I was going to start, which on the big controversy over a criminal subpoena to the Federal Reserve, I want to ask you about these jobless claims, because you have had some thoughts on this issue of the low hire world. Are you surprised that these claims remain, what did Rick say, sub 200? Sub 200,000. He said you got to go back to the Beatles to find numbers like this.
Yeah, that was a good line. Look, I'm not surprised by these low numbers. I've been saying, as you know, for months, our labor market indicators coming out of the Chicago Fed suggest strongly that there's stability in the labor market, that it's not, it's cooling at a slow rate. The low hiring, low firing is not what the business cycle looks like. That characterizes a high uncertainty environment where everybody just kind of pulls back. High layoffs with low hiring, that's what the business cycle looks like. And you saw the unemployment rate tick down. You've seen the vacancy rate still remaining relatively modest, comparable to previous booms, and layoffs are low. You see that in unemployment claims, but you see that in the layoff rate and the other indicators. So I think there's still strength there, and growth has been pretty solid. The American consumer continues to be the driving force. I don't think it's AI. I think it's consumer spending. And that's rooted so far in income growth has still been pretty strong.
Austan, part of what motivated the latest series of rate cuts was concern about weakness in the jobs market. Is it time, in your opinion, to put that concern aside?
I have put that concern aside. As you know, I dissented at the last one precisely because, A, we had little data and a lot was shut down, and I wanted to wait. And I think the most important thing facing us is we've got to get inflation back to 2%. Everywhere I'm going, out here in the 7th District, you're hearing about cost, you're hearing about affordability, you're hearing it on the business side and on the personal side. And so let's just make sure we're on path back to 2%. If we are, I think decent growth in the economy, solid, unchanging steadiness or cooling mildly in the job market, rates can go down still a fair amount, but we have to have convincing evidence that we're on path back to 2% inflation.
So really what you're talking about, Austan, sounds to me like a debate about timing. You think we ought to get there, which is lower rates, but the speed with which you get there is the one that you seem to be arguing with. Do you see rates lower at the end of this year than they are right now?
I do, but it's a little more than just timing. We must get convincing evidence, as I say, that prices and inflation is going back to 2%. And even in the latest CPI and PPI numbers, there's some that is encouraging, but there's some that are still warnings. So the best thing about the recent inflation numbers we got are that the impact of tariffs on inflation, maybe it's easing as we want it to, that would just prove to be transitory and goods inflation would go back down to where it was before this started. The disturbing part was if you look at non-housing services, that inflation is not yet under control. And we've had some discouraging signs, healthcare inflation and others that I don't need to tell everybody. People can look and for themselves and see that the price of these services, when you got inflation in that running over 4% at an annualized rate, you still got some work to do. So we've been 5 years fighting to get inflation on a path back to 2%. And we made some progress, but we need that. And if we get that, I think rates can come down.
Yeah. Well, you led right into this question, Mr. President. Now I'm going to call you Austan. You've never told me to call you Mr. President.
Oh, man. No, you should, yes.
I always like to do that because I tell people, well, he insists on me calling him Mr. President. You don't do that. You're not like that. But someone pretty. You mentioned
still owe me dinner, but I don't know what happened.
Tacos.
Yeah.
Someone wrote in because they were kind of raised an eyebrow when you said Jay Powell was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and this was their take on it, Austan, which I mentioned earlier. Why a Fed chair who lost 40 years of inflation control with the insane policy of buying bonds, $2 trillion of bonds, and kept rates at zero for 2 years after the vaccine confirmation in a robust economy? Why is he a first ballot Hall of Fame chair? Inflation has been above target for 5 years, and the fiscal insanity he encouraged and enabled has left us in a precarious situation. And I'm just wondering, why did we? Who's to blame for the 5 years of being above the target of inflation? And there's a lot of blame to go around, I guess.
Well, as you say, there's a lot of blame to go around, and that's a big topic. I've only been at the Fed for 3 years, so when the thing was raging out of control, I wasn't there.
Right, just the last 3 years.
I do think the Fed moved too slowly, and that they weren't the only ones counting on inflation to be transitory. Now, it's Steve's line that it turned out team transitory was right in the end. And that we did have the supply shocks and it came down. I think the Fed deserves blame for moving too slowly, and it's the Fed's job to get inflation back to 2%. We can't change the shocks that happen, but we can change how we react to them. On the question of why is Jay Powell a first ballot Hall of Famer in my book, look at the series of things. We had an epic crisis, catastrophe in the economy, and there was no financial crisis. We had the Silicon Valley Bank collapse that did not turn into a financial crisis. Mm-hmm. Inflation fell the most close to that it has ever fallen in a single year. If you look in that kind of 2023, 2024 period. And there was no recession. That's never happened before. And you will remember that economists were saying there was a 100% chance of recession when Larry Summers was saying the unemployment rate would have to go up significantly to 6% or something for 5 consecutive years before you would see inflation come down.
To call it just a horrible performance, when President Trump calls it the greatest economy, we're building the greatest economy we've ever had, well, and at the same time saying that Powell's doing a terrible job, it doesn't really. Whoever gets to take credit for new highs in the market and much better GDP maybe, and the labor market, as you point out, its demise was greatly exaggerated, just like the recession.
Greatly exaggerated. And the growth is solid. I mean, just look at the American consumer.
Pretty good.
Is powering growth,
but
and it never slowed down.
It was 15 months after the approval of the virus that the Fed raised rates.
15 months.
15 months.
Okay. Difference from 2 years. Anyway, Austan, let's get to this issue of what's happening in Washington right now. The president or the administration has issued apparently criminal subpoenas to the Federal Reserve. People who support that action say, you know what? We want to get to the bottom of this. The Fed failed to respond to our queries, and this is an appropriate action. What do you think about that?
I'm not a lawyer. I know that there have been countries that had criminal investigations of their central banks, but those countries are Zimbabwe and Russia and Turkey and a bunch of places that you would not characterize as advanced economies. Anything that's infringing or attacking the independence of the central bank is a mess. You're going to get inflation come roaring back if you try to take away the independence of the central bank. And I told you, we're on a path back to 2% inflation. We have been for 5 years. We've made progress at some points. At some points, it's gone the wrong way. That's not been an easy road. To try to blow up Fed independence is kind of a festering stink bomb in the middle of that road back to 2%. I mean,
with all due respect, Mr.
we
President,
need to be really careful.
That's not exactly responsive. You're not arguing that the Fed should not be subject to inquiry when there's a question about the veracity of something the chair might have said in front of Congress.
I don't like I said, I'm not a lawyer. The only reason I'm not answering the legal question of should this or that be investigated, I don't know anything about that. I know that in Chair Powell's statement, I agree with his argument that if you're investigating as a pretext because you disagree with the rate decisions, that's a mess. We should not be in that place. We should be taking the job seriously of setting interest rates, which we do at the FOMC. As I've said many times, you become a sworn member of the Federal Reserve, you're out of the elections business. The minutes come out and the transcript will come out. You can see word for word what's on people's mind, and people take the job very seriously. It's all about the economic outlook and the economic conditions, and that's where it should be. The law gives the Fed the job to look at the stabilizing of prices, the maximizing employment, and that's it. That's the job. It doesn't say anything about make the stock market happy. It doesn't say anything about make the president happy. It's maximize employment and stabilize prices, and we must commit to that. If Austan, we don't, to me, that's a mess.
Austan, look, I don't think anybody is happy about lawfare or the idea of coercion or anything else. The question I would ask you, and it's a question we get a lot from viewers, so I have great sympathy for the question, which is to the extent that you believe that the American taxpayer should have be able to hold an institution, even like the Federal Reserve, accountable, not just for the decisions it makes, but for its spending in the context of a renovation and the like. What does that mean? Should the taxpayer be able to hold the Federal Reserve accountable? Should there be audits of how the money is spent and the like? Or is this money genuinely considered separate? You don't consider this taxpayer money? I know this is different than about the policy of the Federal Reserve, and I recognize the clear view that there's a coercive effort underway, and I hear all that. I'm just to those who are asking this other question about accountability over spending.
Okay, those are two different questions.
Totally,
it's not a. This is not a criminal inquiry about budget overruns.
I recognize you could do this through hearings and other things too.
I think there were more than 60 audits of the Fed Reserve System, including the 12 reserve banks. We all have audits. There are system-wide audits, and there are audits of the Board of Governors. There should be, but we should not, in my opinion, and the Federal Reserve Act set up so that there would not be direct coercive control of the budget of the Fed because of policy differences over interest rates. I think that would be really dangerous if that's what you're asking. We should have oversight of costs, and my understanding is they've outlined here are why there were cost overruns in this Washington, D.C. building. That's something totally different than if you're mad about what the interest rate path is. Should you be able to go over and bully the FOMC? I think that's just a really disturbing concept.
Ways to deal with this that are separate from a criminal subpoena. Austan, thank you for joining us this morning.